I say I am the gate of God. Verily I say I am the bar. Verily I say I am the gate of God.
Thank you very much, Enoli. Beautiful voice, beautiful words, of course. It is the next installment of the greatest story ever told, The Dawnbreakers, as penned by The Guardian and originally put together by none other than Mullah Muhammad Ali, aka Nabil. As per usual, I'm going to give you a quick recap of what we covered last chapter. So we learned that Mullah Hussein went and met the Bab. On his first meeting, he had this treatise that he thought whoever he finds that claims to be the promised one will unravel. So he shows this book to the Bab. The Bab peruses through a little bit of it and answers the questions in a masterly fashion. The Bab then hits him with, let me do a little explanation on the Surah Yusuf for you. He starts writing this first surah, this Surah Mulk, the Surah of Dominion, which is the first part of the Gayom al-Azman. So not the whole thing. The whole thing was put together in over 40 days. But this part alone blew Mullah Hussein's mind. He ends up becoming a believer. He wants to get up. He wants to go outside. And the Bab says, don't do this. People will think you're crazy. Stay here. He also says to him that 17 other people must independently find him. So 18 people in total. He says to Mullah Hussein, he says, go to the Masjid al-Khani. He said, go there. I will meet you later on, but we will just meet at night. So go there and engage in work. So this is what he does. Mullah Hussein goes there. There's plenty of dignitaries who come to meet Mullah Hussein, and Mullah Hussein carries on sharing various teachings, but people don't realize that the source of some of these teachings are coming from the Bab himself. He goes and has these interviews with the Bab at night and is absolutely enraptured and is in love. Then we have Ali Bastami. Mullah Ali Bastami comes along with 12 other disciples, so 13 of them coming down, and they're all in search of the Bab. Ali Bastami, he sees Mullah Hussein and he says to him, wait, your agitation seems to have disappeared. What's happening? I don't get it. And he says, why are you working here? What's going on? And Mullah Hussein says, well, maybe I have to not say anything. And Ali Bastami is like, please tell me. He says, look, if it's you that's the promised one, we'll believe. Mullah Hussein says, no. Ali Bastami goes home that night. He has a dream, and in his dream, he's led by a light. He then goes and sees Mullah Hussein and says, yes, this is it. I found out who it is. We then know from the Bab that when they go to visit, the Ethiopian servant opens the door and says, enter and therein in peace. And yes, sure enough, the Bab confirms, I did lead him. I've been conversing with him. This is true. Then we go on and we find out that the Bab says, I am 2 years younger than my Lord. This quote from Imam Ali actually refers to him because the Bab, His Holiness, is 2 years younger than Baha'u'llah. The Bab being born in 1819, Baha'u'llah in 1817. So this quote from Imam Ali, I'm 2 years younger than my Lord, which previously didn't make any sense, all of a sudden now makes sense. We learn about Sheikh Abid. Sheikh Abid was the tutor of the Bab, and he would teach the Bab, and one day, whilst teaching the Bab, Sheikh Abid asked His Holiness the Bab to recite something. I think he's 6 years old at this time. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The Bab says he won't do this unless he knows the explanation. And the teacher says, I don't know what it is. Would you like to explain? And then the Bab explains. Sheikh Abid is blown away. He then contacts Haji Mirza Sayyid Ali, who's the uncle of the Bab, who's in charge of the Bab, and says, take your child. I don't know what to do with him. His knowledge is too great. The uncle says, look, we've spoken about this before, Sayyid Ali Muhammad. We've spoken about this before. And he says, look, I'm trying. I don't know. He realized that education isn't for him. His knowledge is way too great. He then takes him to work with him. And they live in Bashir for a while. And he works as a merchant for a couple of years. We then learn that the Bab marries Mirza Sayyid Hassan's sister. They have a baby called Baby Ahmad. Unfortunately, Baby Ahmad passes away. And the Bab says that this is a sacrifice for the Lord. He then goes on to make this wonderful statement where he says, this is for God. And he says, not until my breast is made the target for countless darts, for thy sake will the tumults of his soul be stilled. Such is his love for God, for this whole thing that's unraveling before us. We also learn a little bit about Godus. When Godus comes down, the rest of the Letter of the Livings had found the Bab. Godus comes down, he sees Mullah Hussein, he says, wait, where is the Bab? And Mullah Hussein says, well, I'm not going to tell you, you have to find him. And then all of a sudden, while Mullah Hussein is talking, he looks past him, he sees the Bab and he says, I can tell that's the Bab from the way he walks. And the Bab confirms that they have been speaking in dreams beforehand anyway. The last thing that comes into this part that we discovered, he says to Vahid, even if you, Vahid, were to not believe in him whom God shall make manifest, I would disown you. He says, if a Christian who doesn't believe in me but believes in him whom God shall make manifest, Baha'u'llah, then he will say, and he will I praise. And he's reaffirming that, yes, he's there with his own faith, But the main point is for people to turn to Baha'u'llah when he comes. We will now continue with our chapter. I see Mr. Bahrami joining us from South Africa there, and I would ask if he'd be so kind to read for us. Thank you.
The days which the Bab devoted to commercial pursuits were mostly spent in Boucher. The oppressive heat of the summer did not deter him from devoting each Friday several hours to continuous worship upon the roof of his house. Though exposed to the fierce rays of the noontide sun, he, turning his heart to his beloved, continued to commune with him, unmindful of the intensity of the heat and oblivious of the world around him. From early dawn till sunrise, and from midday till late in the afternoon, he dedicated his time to meditation and pious worship. Turning his gaze towards the north in the direction of Tehran, he, at every break of day, greeted with a heart overflowing with love and joy the rising sun, which to him was a sign and symbol of that day star of truth that was soon to dawn upon the world. As a lover who beholds the face of his beloved, he gazed upon the rising orb with steadfastness and longing. He seemed to be addressing in mystic language that shining luminary, and to be entrusting it with his message of yearning and love to his concealed beloved. With such transports of delight, he greeted its beaming rays that the heedless soul, ignorant around him, thought him to be enamored with the sun itself. I have heard Haji Sayyid Jawad Karbala recount the following. Whilst journeying to India, I passed through Boucher. As I was already acquainted with Haji Mirza Sayyid Ali, I was enabled to meet the Bab on several occasions. Every time I met him, I found him in such a state of humility and lowliness as words fail me to describe. His downcast eyes, his extreme courtesy, and the serene expression of his face made an indelible impression upon my soul. I often heard those who were closely associated with him testify to the purity of his character, to the charm of his manners, to his self-effacement, to his high integrity, and to his extreme devotion to God. A certain man confided to his care a trust, requesting him to dispose of it at a fixed price. When the Bab sent him the value of that article, the man found that the sum which he had been offered considerably exceeded the limit which he had fixed. He immediately wrote to the Bab, requesting him to explain the reason. The Bab replied, "What I have sent you is entirely your due. There is not a single farthing in excess of what is your right. There was a time when the trust you had delivered to me had attained this value. Failing to sell it at that price, and I feel it my duty to offer you the whole of that sum." However much the Bab's client entreated him to receive back the sum in excess, the Bab persisted in refusing. With what assiduous care he attended those gatherings at which the virtues of the Sayyid al-Shuhada, the Imam Hussein, were being extolled. With what attention he listened to the chanting of the eulogies. What tenderness and devotion he showed at those scenes of lamentation and prayer. Tears rained from his eyes as his trembling lips murmured words of prayer and praise. How compelling was his dignity, how tender the sentiments which his countenance inspired.
So we get an insight into the Bab when he was staying at his uncle's house, how he'd be on the roof and he'd be pacing back and forth, and he'd be looking to the north. Now, of course, if we go to our map, we'll see here our map of Iran where Shiraz is. Shiraz is obviously just south of Tehran. So we can see Shiraz is here, we have Tehran here, and Nur, the birthplace of Baha'u'llah, is all the way up is all the way up here. So the Bab, even at that age, is looking up, facing the north to Baha'u'llah. He somehow knows that Baha'u'llah is there and Baha'u'llah is born. So he's doing this and he's enraptured in prayer and he's just so in love. Then Nabil speaks to somebody called Haji Sayyid Javed Karbala'i. And this is someone who was friends with the Bab's uncle, Haji Mirza Sayyid Ali. And he gives his account of seeing the Bab as a kid and seeing the Bab in the way he would behave, his exemplary behavior, his love, the way he would recite prayers. So we get a little window, a little insight into what's happening. Finally, we know that the Bab spent a while in Bandar Bushehr, which is also south. And whilst even there he was looking up and he's praying towards Nur, we find that the Bab has this trade deal with somebody where he's agreed a certain price to do something, but then the Bab says, it's actually, I haven't managed to sell it, so I'm actually going to pay you more for this, and this is what's going to be. His client was so stunned at this, because bear in mind, the merchants, I mean, it's not really different today. If you've ever been anywhere and you're in a market, people try and argue and get the best price and the rest of it. But the Bab wasn't interested in trying to get the maximum money for it. He was interested in the justice of it. He actually changed a lot of things in the merchants' world in the way in which he deal. It was very common in those days for people to agree price on tea. For example, they were going to say, right, it's $20 for this tea. The person then comes and he says, yes, I'll order it. And he comes to pay his $20. When he arrives, they say, well, actually, no, there's been a little fluctuation in the market. When I say $20, I mean $4,500 or whatever the figure may be. And then the person would be kind of stuck or whatever, or vice versa. The person would come to pay their $20 and then would say, actually, you know, my wife has just discovered online shopping, as have my children, and actually, can I pay you $3? Or she says, my husband has discovered kebabs, whatever it might be. The fact is, people would agree a price and then they would flip-flop on this price. But you've got the Bab here who's very much to his way, who's sticking with things and saying, no, actually, this is the way we're going to carry things forward. We're going to be very honourable and we're going to use our morals here.
As to those whose supreme privilege it was to be enrolled by the Bab in the book of his revelation as his chosen letters of the living, their names are as follows: Mullah Hussein Bushruya, Muhammad Hassan, his brother, Muhammad Bakir, his nephew, Mullah Aliya Bastami, Mullah Khoda Bakhsh Kuchani, later named Mullah Ali, Mullah Hassan Bastiani, Sayyid Hussein Yazdi, Mirza Muhammad Razi Khan Yazdi, Saeed Hendi, Mullah Mahmud Ekhui, Mullah Jalil Urumi, Mullah Ahmad Abdul Maraghi, Mullah Bakir Tabrizi, Mullah Yusuf Ardebili, Mirza Hadi, son of Mullah Abdul Wahab Kazvini, Mirza Muhammad Ali Kazvini, Tahira, Qudus. These all, with the single exception of Tahira, attained the presence of the Bab and were personally invested by him with the distinction of this rank. It was she who, having learned of the intended departure of her sister's husband, Mirza Muhammad Ali, from Qazvin, entrusted him with a sealed letter, requesting that he deliver it to that promised one, whom she said he was sure to meet in the course of his journey. Say to him from me, she added, the effulgence of thy face flashed forth, and the rays of thy visage arose on high. Then speak the word, am I not your Lord? And thou art, thou art. We will all reply. Mirza Muhammad Ali eventually met me and recognized the Bab and conveyed to him both letter and the message of Tahira. The Bab forthwith declared her one of the living. Her father, Haji Mullah Salih Kazvini, and his brother Mullah Taqi were both mujtahids of great renown, were skilled in the traditions of Muslim law, and were universally respected by the people of Tehran, Qazvin, and other leading cities of Persia. She was married to Mullah Muhammad, son of Mullah Taqi, her uncle, whom the Shias styled Shahida Thalith. Although her family belonged to the Bala Sari, Tahira alone showed, from the very beginning, a marked sympathy and devotion to Sayyid Kazim. As an evidence of her personal admiration for him, she wrote an apology in defense and justification of the teachings of Sheikh Ahmad and presented it to him. To this, she soon received a reply, couched in the most affectionate terms, in the opening passages of which the Sayyid thus addressed her. O thou who art the solace of mine eyes, Ya Qurrati Aini, with the joy of my heart. Ever since that time, she has been known as Qurratul Ain. After the historic gathering of Badasht, a number of those who attended were so amazed at the fearlessness and outspoken language of that heroine that they felt it their duty to acquaint the Bab with the character of her startling and unprecedented behaviour. They strove to tarnish the purity of her name. To their accusations, the Bab replied, "What am I going to say regarding her whom the tongue of power and glory has named Tahira, the Pure One?" These words proved sufficient to silence those who had endeavoured to undermine her position. From that time onwards, she was designated by the believers as Tahira. A word should now be said in explanation of the term Bala Sari. Sheikh Ahmad and Sayyid Kazim, as well as their followers, when visiting the shrine of the Imam Hussein in Karbala, invariably occupied, as a mark of reverence, the lower end of the sepulchre. They never advanced beyond it, whereas other worshippers, the Bala Sari, recited their prayers in the upper section of that shrine. The Sheikhis, believing as they did that every true believer lives both in this world and in the next, felt it unseemly and improper to step beyond the limits of the lower section of the shrine of the Imam Hussein, who in their eyes was the very incarnation of the most perfect believer.
Thank you, Dawn. So we know who the letters of the living were. Their names are given. We know all of them met the Bab. The only one who didn't was Tahireh. And Tahireh basically had this vision where she sees Sayyid Ali Muhammad and she understands who he is. And she realizes that her sister's husband, Mirza Muhammad Ali Ghazvini, is going to be heading down and is going to go and see the Bab. So she gives this letter and says, "Please give this to the Bab and tell him that I accept him, that I find him." The Bab knows full well that this letter is coming and takes it and accepts her as one of the letters of the living. She also goes to Karbala. So she goes from Ghazvin, which is just over here. She's in Ghazvin, that's where she's from, and she decides to go to Karbala to study with Sayyid Kazim, and she writes a treatise to them, and they very much praise her. We know a lot of people end up being very jealous of Tahireh. Tahireh is a woman, of course, and people at this time period weren't necessarily so complimentary to women and thought women had a certain place. Completely different to the world now, obviously. There's no sexism, everyone loves women, and everything's totally fine, right? So what ends up happening is some people start complaining to the Bab, and they say to him, "Look, what's this Tahireh doing? She's a woman, she should calm down, the kubila should be made, the baklava should be prepared by her, come on, what did she do?" And it's like, Tahireh, when His Holiness Baha'u'llah has given her the title Tahireh, the Pure One, what am I to say? Then we learn a little bit about the Bolasari. It talks about in the shrine of the Imam Hussein that there are some people who go to the upper tier, some people that don't. So she was one of those people, basically. The Sheikhis, however, didn't believe in this thing. They said, no, you should stay within your section, essentially. It's a minor detail, but it talks about what it means to be part of the Bolasari, the upper echelons, when it comes to praying.
Mullah Hussein, who anticipated being the chosen companion of the Bab during his pilgrimage to Mecca and Medina, was, as soon as the latter decided to depart from Shiraz, summoned to the presence of his master, who gave him the following instructions. "The days of our companionship are approaching their end. My covenant with you is now accomplished. Gird up the loins of endeavor and arise to diffuse my cause. Be not dismayed at the sight of degeneracy and perversity of this generation. For the Lord of the covenant shall assuredly assist you. Verily he shall surround you with his loving protection, and shall lead you from victory to victory. Even as the cloud that rains its bounty upon the earth, traverse the land from end to end, and shower upon its people the blessings which the Almighty, in his mercy, has deigned to confer upon you. Forbear with the ulamas and resign yourself to the will of God. Raise the cry, awake, awake, for lo, the gate of God is open, and the morning light is shedding its radiance upon all mankind. The promised one is made manifest. Prepare the way for him, O people of the earth. Deprive not yourselves of its redeeming grace, nor close your eyes to its effulgent glory. Those whom you find receptive to your call, share with them the epistles and tablets we have revealed for you, that perchance these wondrous words may cause them to turn away from the sloth of heedlessness and soar into the realm of the divine presence. In this pilgrimage upon which we are soon to embark, we have chosen Qudus as our companion. We have left you behind to face the onslaught of a fierce and relentless enemy. Rest assured, however, that a bounty unspeakably glorious shall be conferred upon you. Follow the course of your journey towards the north, and visit on your way Esfahan, Kashan, Qom, and Tehran. Beseech Almighty Providence that He may graciously enable you to attain in that capital the seat of true sovereignty and enter the mansion of the Beloved. A secret lies hidden in that city. When made manifest, it shall turn the earth into paradise. My hope is that you may partake of its grace and recognize its splendor. From Tehran proceed to Khorasan, and there proclaim anew the call. From thence return to Najaf and Karbala, and there await the summons of your Lord. Be assured that the high mission for which you have been created will, in its entirety, be accomplished by you, until you have consummated your work. If all the darts of an unbelieving world be directed against you, they will be powerless to hurt a single hair of your head. All things are imprisoned within His mighty grasp. He verily is the Almighty, the All-Subduing. The Bab then summoned to his presence Mullah Ali Bastami and addressed to them words of cheer and loving kindness. He instructed him to proceed directly to Najaf and Karbala, alluded to the severe trials and afflictions which would befall him, and enjoined him to be steadfast till the end. Your faith, he told him, must be immovable as a rock, must weather every storm and survive every calamity. Suffer not the denunciations of the foolish and the calumnies of the clergy to afflict you, or to turn you from your purpose. For you are called to partake of the celestial banquet prepared for you in the immortal realm. You are the first to leave the house of God and to suffer for His sake. If you be slain in His path, remember that great will be your reward, and goodly the gift which will be bestowed upon you. No sooner were these words uttered than Mullah Ali arose from his seat and set out to prosecute his mission. At about a farsang's distance from Shiraz, he was overtaken by a youth who, flushed with excitement, impatiently asked to speak to him. His name was Abdul Wahab. I beseech you, he tearfully entreated Mullah Ali, to allow me to accompany you on your journey. Perplexities oppress my heart. I pray you to guide my steps in the way of the truth. Last night in my dream, I heard the crier announce in the market street of Shiraz the appearance of the Imam Ali, the commander of the faithful. He called the multitude, arise and seek him. Behold, he plucks out of the burning fire charters of liberty and is distributing them to the people. Hasten to him, for whoever receives them from his hands will be secure from penal suffering, and whoever fails to obtain them from him will be bereft of the blessings of paradise. Immediately I heard the voice of the crier. I arose and, abandoning my shop, ran across the market street of Vakil to a place where my eyes beheld you standing and distributing those same charters to the people. To everyone who approached to receive them from your hands, you would whisper in his ear a few words, which instantly caused him to flee in consternation and exclaim, Woe betide me, for I am deprived of the blessings of Ali and his kindred. Ah, miserable me, that I am accounted among the outcast and fallen. I awoke from my dream and, immersed in an ocean of thought, regained my shop. Suddenly I saw you pass, and accompanied by a man who wore a turban and who was conversing with you. I sprang from my seat and, impelled by a power which I could not repress, ran to overtake you. To my utter amazement, I found you standing upon the very site which I had witnessed in my dream, engaged in a recital of traditions and verses. Standing aside at a distance, I kept watching you, wholly unobserved by you and your friend. I heard the man whom you were addressing impetuously protest. Easier it is for me to be devoured by the flames of hell than to acknowledge the truth of your words, the weight of which mountains are unable to sustain. To his contemptuous rejection, you return this answer, were all the universe to repudiate its truth? It could never tarnish the unsullied purity of his robe of grandeur. Departing from him, you directed your steps towards the gate of Qaziran. I continue to follow you until I reach this place. Mullah Ali tried to appease his troubled heart and to persuade him to return to his shop and resume his daily work. Your association with me, he urged, would involve me in difficulties. Return to Shiraz and rest assured, for you are accounted of the people of salvation. Far be it from the justice of God to withhold from so ardent and devoted a seeker the cup of his grace, or to deprive a soul so athirst from the billowing ocean of his revelation. The words of Mullah Ali proved of no avail. The more he insisted upon the return of Abdul Wahab, the louder grew his lamentation and weeping. Mullah Ali finally felt compelled to comply with his wish, resigning himself to the will of God. Haji Abdul Majid, the father of Abdul Wahab, has often been heard to recount with eyes filled with tears this story. How deeply, he said, I regret the deed I committed. Pray that God may grant me the remission of my sin. I was one among the favored in the court of the sons of the Farman Farma, the governor of the province of Fars. Such was my position that none dared oppose or harm me. No one questioned my authority or ventured to interfere with my freedom. Immediately I heard that my son Abdul Wahab had forsaken his shop and had left the city. I ran out in the direction of the Qaziran gate to overtake him. Armed with a club which I intended to beat him, I inquired as to the road he had taken. I was told that a man wearing a turban had just crossed the street and that my son was seen following him. They seemed to have agreed to leave the city together. This excited my anger and indignation. How could I tolerate, I thought to myself, such unseemly behavior on the part of my son? I, who already hold so privileged a position in the court of the sons of the Farman Farma, nothing but the severest chastisement, I felt, could wipe away the effect of my son's disgraceful conduct. I continued my search until I reached them. Seized with a savage fury, I inflicted upon Mullah Ali unspeakable injuries. To the strokes that fell heavily upon him, he, with extraordinary serenity, returned his answer. Stay your hand, O Abdul Majid, for the eye of God is observing you. I take him as my witness, that I am in no wise responsible for the conduct of your son. I mind not the tortures you inflict upon me, for I stand prepared for the most grievous afflictions in the path I have chosen to follow. Your injuries compared to what is destined to befall me in the future, are as a drop compared to the ocean. Verily, I say you shall survive me, and will come to recognize my innocence. Great will then be your remorse, and deep your sorrow. Scorning his remarks and heedless of his appeal, I continued to beat him until I was exhausted. Silently and heroically, he endured this most undeserved chastisement at my hands. Finally, I ordered my son to follow me and left Mullah Ali to himself. On our way back to Shiraz, my son related to me the dream he had dreamt. A feeling of profound regret gradually seized me. The blamelessness of Mullah Ali was vindicated in my eyes, and the memory of my cruelty to him continued long to oppress my soul. Its bitterness lingered in my heart until the time when I felt obliged to transfer my residence from Shiraz to Baghdad. From Baghdad, I moved to Kazimain, where Abdul Wahab established his business. A strange mystery brooded over his youthful face. He seemed to be concealing from me a secret which appeared to have transformed his life. And when in the year 1267 AH, Baha'u'llah journeyed to Iraq and visited Kazimain, Abdul Wahab fell immediately under the spell of his charm and pledged his undying devotion to him. A few years later, when my son had suffered martyrdom in Tehran and Baha'u'llah had been exiled to Baghdad, he with infinite loving kindness and mercy awakened me from the sleep of heedlessness and himself taught me the message of the new day, washing away with the waters of divine forgiveness the stains of that cruel act. This episode marks the first affliction which befell the disciple of the Bab after the declaration of his mission. Mullah Ali realized from this experience how steep and thorny was the path leading to his eventual attainment of the promise given him by his master. Wholly resigned to his will and prepared to shed his lifeblood for the cause, he resumed his journey until he arrived at Najaf. In the presence of Sheikh Mohammed Hassan, one of the most celebrated ecclesiastics of Shia Islam, and in the face of the distinguished company of his disciples, Mullah Ali announced fearlessly the manifestation of the Bab, the gate, whose advent they were eagerly awaiting.
This is one of the most beautiful stories actually from the Dawnbreakers. The Bab, after the letters of the living have all been found, he turns around and says to Mullah Hussein, who was expecting to be going on pilgrimage. Of course, we know that there would be this pilgrimage that's going to take place once 361 souls have found the Bab, that the Bab would go from Bandar Bashir all the way to Mecca and Medina. The number 361 is 19 times 19, and this is the abjad value for the word kula shay, meaning all things. So there's a numerical importance to this number, why it's 361. Mullah Hussein thinks he's the first one. He's probably going to go with the Bab on pilgrimage. The Bab says to him, I've chosen Godus to come on pilgrimage. He then says, you will have a bounty unspeakably glorious, indicating that he's going to meet Baha'u'llah. He then also says to him, you will be martyred, and you can have so many trials and tests. Now, I imagine if that was me, and if I was the first one to find the Bab, I would be like, I'm the one going on pilgrimage with him. Why is this other person? But again, there's no ego there. Maybe there is over here. You know, I'd want to go on that trip. So Mullah Hussein takes this, and then he's told he's going to go. If you remember the acronym we have, SIK-QT, S-I-K-QT. This is a reminder of S for Shiraz. He's going to go to Shiraz, then he's going to go to I, Isfahan, then he's going to K, Kashan, Gom, and then Tehran. So this is the trajectory that Mullah Hussein is told to take. From Tehran, he then must go to Khorasan. Khorasan is this province, the capital of which is Mashhad. He's going to go over here. And then from here, he's going to go all the way across to Karbala and Najaf, which I don't know if it's just coincidence that it ends up being like a cross that he has to make. Then he speaks to Bastami, and he says to Bastami, he says, I need you to go across to both Karbala and Najaf. So from Shiraz to Karbala and Najaf. And he says, you are the first one to leave. Some people say he was greater than Mullah Hussein in his knowledge. So Mullah Ali Bastami leaves Shiraz, and he's traveling along, and then we have this story that's shared with us. Somebody by the name of Abdul Wahab, who's a merchant, is in his shop, and one day he kind of falls asleep and has this little dream. In the dream, there's a town crier saying, everybody, everybody, Imam Ali's here. He's giving out these charters. He's giving out these leaflets and pamphlets everywhere. Imam Ali's here. He then rushes in his dream, and then he goes to find this Imam Ali, and he wakes up and he's like, what a strange dream. Who does he see? He sees Mullah Ali Bastami walking past, and he's like, that's the guy that I just saw in the dream. So he then goes after him, and he hears that he's talking to someone with a turban, and he whispers something to him. This is Mullah Ali Bastami. He's whispering the fact that the Ghaem is here. And this person says, I would rather burn in hellfire than to call this truth. This is absolute nonsense. Mullah Ali Bastami just smiles and says, you can repudiate the truth all you want. It won't sully the robe of the Bab. Then Abdul Wahab goes up to him and says, look, what are you doing? Where are you going? I want to come with you. I saw the stream. Mullah Ali Bastami says, please don't. This will cause more problems. Please stay where you are. I can share a message with you, but stay where you are. Abdul Wahab says, no, I am not going anywhere. I am following you. I'm coming. And Mullah Ali Bastami says, please, this is not going to end well. Please go. But no, Abdul Wahab is insistent that he's going to carry on. So they carry on together. Then we hear this story from Abdul Majid, the father of Abdul Wahab, that he had he'd come home, he's an important minister, and he'd found out that people had told him that this shop was empty, the shop that his son was meant to be in. And he's like, well, where has he gone? Where has Abdul Wahab suddenly gone? And they said, well, he went to follow this man. They saw him following Mullah Ali Bastami. Abdul Majid goes and he gets his club and he's like, right, this is going to embarrass me. I'm going to go and teach this guy a lesson, this guy who's got my son. So he runs after him. He goes searching until he finds Mullah Ali Bastami with his son Abdul Wahab. He gets his club. He says to Mullah Ali Bastami, hey, you! Grabs him and starts beating him and beating him and beating him to the point where he's out of breath. So much he's hitting Mullah Ali Bastami. Mullah Ali Bastami's response is, stay your hand. You don't realize the innocence of me. He says, you will outlive me and you will come to realize how innocent I am. Abdul Majid carries on beating him. It's only until he's walking away with Abdul Wahab that Abdul Wahab shares the dream that he had. He shares the story. This regret stuck with Abdul Majid for many, many years, and he was so sorry and so regretful. He ends up becoming a follower of the Bab and a follower of Baha'u'llah. It's only when he meets Baha'u'llah later on in Baghdad does Baha'u'llah forgive him for what he's done. But to his very last days, it burned in his heart what he did. Mullah Ali Bastami was responding and he said, this beating that you've given me is nothing compared to what I'm going to end up with.
Abdul Wahab, the one who really accepted Mullah Ali Bastami and who then told his father Abdul Majid, this gentleman has a remarkable trajectory in the history of our faith. When Baha'u'llah comes to Baghdad, Abdul Wahab becomes completely, dearest Dave, enamored of him and his reality. He was enamored of Mullah Ali Bastami. He was already a Babi in his heart, but now he becomes tremendously in love with the beauty of Baha'u'llah and the reality of Baha'u'llah. When Baha'u'llah goes back to Iran, and subsequent to the events of the sort of attack on the Shah and the massacre of all the Babis, thousands of them, Abdul Wahab, this young boy who was a merchant in Shiraz, is thrown into the Siyah Chal at the same time as His Holiness Baha'u'llah. He's chained with the same chain and he's heading towards martyrdom. Baha'u'llah says, you don't have shoes. I'll give you my shoes. And he goes to the place of martyrdom. His name is in the memorials of the faithful. His name is in countless tablets of Abdul Wahab. And he's quite an amazing. I felt you were moved. Abdul Wahab tells his story. And as he tells his story, Abdul Wahab dances the same Abdul Wahab did as he was going to the field of martyrdom to be beheaded. And then Abdul Wahab told all the American believers, you see, his spirit is still with me 30, 40 years later.
The final thing that we were studying was the fact that Mullah Ali Bastami has now gone all the way and he's in Najaf. And he's in the presence of Sheikh Muhammad Hassan, one of the most celebrated ecclesiasticals, and he's basically announcing fearlessly the fact the manifestation of the Bab is here. Again, you have to bear in mind, doing this is signing yourself up for death. By standing up and by saying the Bab is here, you know what's going to happen. And like a moth to the flame, this is what Ali Bastami is doing. Absolutely enamored, absolutely in love. So there's this conversation that's going on between them.
His proof, he declared, in his word, his testimony, none other than the testimony with which Islam seeks to vindicate its truth. From the pen of this unschooled Hashemite youth of Persia, there have streamed, within the space of 48 hours, as great a number of verses, of prayers, of homilies, and scientific treatises as would equal in volume the whole of the Quran, which it took Muhammad, the Prophet of God, 23 years to reveal. That profound and fanatic leader, instead of welcoming, in an age of darkness and prejudice, these life-giving evidences of a newborn revelation, forthwith pronounced Mullah Ali a heretic and expelled him from the assembly. His disciples and followers, even the Shaykhis, who already testified to Mullah Ali's piety, sincerity, and learning, endorsed unhesitatingly the judgment against him. The disciples of Sheikh Muhammad Hassan, joining hands with their adversaries, heaped upon him untold indignities. They eventually delivered him, his hands bound in chains, to an official of the Ottoman government, arraigning him as a wrecker of Islam, a calumniator of the Prophet, an instigator of mischief, a disgrace to the faith, and worthy of the penalty of death. He was taken to Baghdad under the escort of government officials and was cast into prison by the governor of that city. Haji Hashim, surnamed Attar, a prominent merchant who was well versed in the scriptures of Islam, recounted the following. I was present at Government House on one occasion when Mullah Ali was summoned to the presence of the assembled notables and government officials of that city. He was publicly accused of being an infidel, an abrogator of the laws of Islam, and a repudiator of its rituals and accepted standards. When his alleged offenses and misdeeds had been enumerated, the Mufti, the chief exponent of the law of Islam in that city, turned to him and said, "O enemy of God, As I was occupying a seat beside the Mufti, I whispered in his ear, "You are as yet unacquainted with this unfortunate stranger. Why address him in such terms? Do you not realize that such words as you have addressed to him will excite the anger of the populace against him? It behooves you to disregard the unsupported charges these busybodies have brought against him, to question him yourself, and to judge him according to the accepted standards of justice inculcated by the faith of Islam." The Mufti was sore displeased, arose from his seat and left the gathering. Mullah Ali was again thrown into prison. A few days later, I inquired about him, hoping to achieve his deliverance. I was informed that on the night on that same day, he had been deported to Constantinople. I made further inquiries and endeavored to find out what eventually befell him. I could not, however, ascertain the truth. A few believed that on his way to Constantinople, he had fallen ill and died. Others maintained that he had suffered martyrdom. Whatever his end, Mullah Ali had by his life and death earned the immortal distinction of having been the first sufferer in the path of this new faith of God, the first to have laid down his life as an offering on the altar of sacrifice. Having set forth Mullah Ali on his mission, the Bab summoned to his presence the remaining letters of the living, and to each severely he gave a special command and appointed a special task. He addressed to them these parting words: "O my beloved friends, you are the bearers of the name of God in this day. You have been chosen as the repositories of his mystery. It behooves each one of you to manifest the attributes of God and to exemplify by your deeds and words the signs of his righteousness, his power and glory. The very members of your body must bear witness to the loftiness of your purpose, the integrity of your life, the reality of your faith, and the exalted character of your devotion. For verily I say, this is the day spoken of by God in his book. On that day will we set a seal upon their mouths, yet shall their hands speak unto us, and their feet shall bear witness to that which they shall have done." Ponder the words of Jesus addressed to his disciples as he sent them forth to propagate the cause of God. In words such as these, he bade them arise and fulfill their mission. "Ye are even as the fire which in the darkness of the night has been kindled upon the mountaintop. Let your light shine before the eyes of men. Such must be the purity of your character and the degree of your renunciation, that the people of the earth may through you recognize and be drawn closer to the Heavenly Father, who is the source of purity and grace. For none has seen the Father who is in heaven. You who are his spiritual children must by your deeds exemplify his virtues and witness to his glory. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt have lost its savor, wherewith shall it be salted? Such must be the degree of your detachment, that into whatever city you enter to proclaim and teach the cause of God, you should in no wise expect either meat or reward from its people. Nay, when you depart out of that city, you should shake the dust from off your feet. As you have entered it pure and undefiled, so must you depart from that city. For verily I say, the Heavenly Father is ever with you and keeps watch over you. If you be faithful to him, he will assuredly deliver into your hands all the treasures of the earth, and will exalt you above all the rulers and the kings of the world. O my letters, verily I say, immensely exalted is this day above the days of the apostles of old. Nay, immeasurable is the difference. You are the witnesses of the dawn of the promised day of God. You are the partakers of the mystic chalice of his revelation. Gird up the loins of endeavor and be mindful of the words of God as revealed in his book. Lo, the Lord, thy God is come, and with him is the company of his angels arrayed before him. Purge your hearts of worldly desires and let angelic virtues be your adorning. Strive that by your deeds you may bear witness to the truth of these words of God, and beware lest, by turning back, he may change you for another people who shall not be your like, and who shall take from you the kingdom of God. The days when idol worship was deemed sufficient are ended. The time is come when naught but the purest motive, supported by deeds of stainless purity, can ascend to the throne of the Most High and be acceptable unto him. The good word riseth up unto him, and the righteous deed will cause it to be exalted before him. You are the lowly of whom God has thus spoken in his book. And we desire to show favor to those who were brought low in the land, and to make them spiritual leaders among men, and to make them our heirs. You have been called to this station. You will attain to it only if you arise to trample beneath your feet every earthly desire, and endeavor to become those honored servants of his who speak not till he hath spoken, and who do his bidding. You are the first letters that have been generated from the primal point, the first springs that have welled out from the source of this revelation. Beseech the Lord your God to grant that no earthly entanglements, no worldly affections, no ephemeral pursuits may tarnish the purity or embitter the sweetness of that grace which flows through you. I am preparing you for the advent of a mighty day. Exert your utmost endeavor that in the world to come, I, who am now instructing you, may before the mercy seat of God rejoice in your deeds and glory in your achievements. The secret of the day that is to come is now concealed. It can neither be divulged nor estimated. The newly born babe of that day excels the wisest and most venerable of men of this time, and the lowliest and most unlearned of that period shall surpass in understanding the most erudite and accomplished divines of this age. Scatter throughout the length and breadth of this land, and with steadfast feet and sanctified hearts, prepare the way for his coming. Heed not your weaknesses and frailty. Fix your gaze upon the invincible power of the Lord your God, the Almighty. Has he not, in past days, caused Abraham, in spite of his seeming helplessness, to triumph over the forces of Nimrod? Has he not enabled Moses, whose staff was his only companion, to vanquish Pharaoh and his hosts? Has he not established the ascendancy of Jesus, poor and lowly as he was in the eyes of men, over the combined forces of the Jewish people? Has he not subjected the barbarous, militant tribes of Arabia to the holy and transforming discipline of Muhammad, his prophet? Arise in his name, put your trust wholly in him, and be assured of ultimate victory. With such words, the Bab quickened the faith of his disciples and launched them upon their mission. To each he assigned his own native province as the field of his labors. He directed them each and all to refrain from specific references to his own name and person. He instructed them to raise the call that the gate to the promised one has been opened, that his proof is irrefutable, and that his testimony is complete. He bade them declare that whoever believes in him has believed in all the prophets of God, and that whoever denies him has denied all his saints and his chosen ones. With these instructions, he dismissed them from his presence and committed them to the care of God. Of these letters of the living, whom he thus addressed, there remained with him in Shiraz Mullah Hussein, the first of these letters, and Qudus, the last. The rest, 14 in number, set out at the hour of dawn from Shiraz, each resolved to carry out in its entirety the task with which he had been entrusted. To Mullah Hussein, as the hour of his departure approached, the Bab addressed these words: "Grieve not that you have not been chosen to accompany me on my pilgrimage to Hijaz. I shall instead direct your steps to that city which enshrines a mystery of such transcendent holiness as neither Hijaz nor Shiraz can hope to rival. My hope is that you may, by the aid of God, be enabled to remove the veils from the eyes of the wayward and to cleanse the minds of the malevolent. Visit on your way Esfahan, Kashan, Tehran, and Khorasan. Proceed hence to Iraq and there await the summons of your Lord, who will keep watch over you and will direct you to whatsoever his will and desire. As to myself, I shall, accompanied by Qudus and my Ethiopian servant, proceed on my pilgrimage to Hijaz. I shall join the company of the pilgrims of Fars, who will shortly be sailing for that land. I shall visit Mecca and Medina and there fulfill the mission with which God has entrusted me. God willing, I shall return hither by the way of Kufi, in which place I hope to meet you. If it be decreed otherwise, I shall ask you to join me in Shiraz. The hosts of the invisible kingdom, be assured, will sustain and reinforce your efforts. The essence of power is not now dwelling in you, and the company of his chosen angels revolves around you. His almighty arms will surround you, and his unfailing spirit will ever continue to guide your steps. He that loves you loves God, and whoever opposes you has opposed God. Whosoever befriends you, him will God befriend, and whoso rejects you, him will God reject.
We've covered quite a chunk there. We have the address to the letters of the living, which is one of my favorite pieces, actually, because it really speaks to us. But before that, we were dealing with Mullah Ali Bastami, continuing his story. Now, we know that when he is in Najaf and he shares with this high ecclesiastical leader the fact that the Bab has come, the response is, you are a heretic. You should go to prison. You are completely crazy, blah, 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 blah. Even some of the sheikhis who are huge fans of Mullah Ali Bastami, they turned on him as well. These people that were with Sayyid Kazim, with Sheikh Ahmad, who heard everything that was said that this promised one was coming. Now all of a sudden, Mullah Ali Bastami, who was this highly regarded disciple, is suddenly talking nonsense. So we then hear from a guy called Haji Hashem, who was there when this trial takes place, because when he says this, there's suddenly a trial and the Mufti introduces him and says, you heretic, you blah, blah, blah. And Haji Hashem says, you don't even know him, like give him a fair trial. There wasn't ever going to be a fair trial. The Mufti basically wanted to crush this out, and as a result, we know that he's sent out to Constantinople, to Istanbul over here. Unfortunately, we don't have a full account of what happens to Mullah Ali Bastami. There's some accounts that says he was put in hard labor camps, that he was murdered, but he was the first person to suffer for the cause, and his suffering took part. Not the first person to be martyred on Persian soil, and it's a point that the Dawnbreaker makes, but he's the first one to suffer. After this, we then go on to the Letters of the Living, and he says to the Letters of the Living, look, you are as the fire in the darkness. Okay, only the purity of your character, and he's really breaking it down. This is what's going to transform people. You must be detached from all things. You must be able to enter a city and have no dirt even come on you and leave, absolutely free of dirt. You're meant to purge your heart. He's really calling these people not just to accept and believe and call themselves a Babi by name or anything like that. You must really take this and it must transform you. You must imbibe, you must absorb, and then you must impart. You must take this message and really let it flow out of you. He then says that you are the first letters generated from this primal point. So the Bab being this primal point. He says also the coming of him whom God shall make manifest hasn't appeared yet. Baha'u'llah is still remained hidden. And it says that a baby born in that day, his knowledge will far surpass the knowledge of the ecclesiastics at the present time. Such is the power. He tells them to get up, to go out. I want you to go to your native towns around Iran, and I want you to spread the message that yes, the Ghaim has returned, and these are the various things that he's asking you to do. A lot of them would have some copies of the Qayyum al-Azmad, not in its entirety at the time, but from the Surah al-Mulk, and they would take many passages from this, and they would have some of the prayers of the Bab, and they'd go to various things. The first 4 letters of the living, we know Mullah Hussein, his brother, and his nephew were to remain behind with Qaddus. And to Mullah Hussein, he says, remain here in Shiraz with me, but then I want you, as we've discussed, to go to Esfahan, to Kashan, to Qam, to Tehran, then across to Mashhad, and then to Karbala, and then I will meet you. The Bab says, I will come back from pilgrimage, and by way of Kufa, I will come and meet you. However, if this doesn't happen for any reason, come and meet me in Shiraz. Qaddus is the one who's chosen to go on pilgrimage with the Bab. The address is sent out to all of them. And that address for me really is something that we can read, and it's a message to us. Why is the Guardian put this in there? It's not just a historical fact. It's meant to be soul-stirring. So we're meant to take this and we're meant to actually realize that this message is also addressed to us. This address to the Letters of the Living is something I would suggest you study in your own time and personally go to. There's a lot of detail in there, but is there anything anyone would like to add to the end of this?
A tiny point I'd like to add is that the beloved guardian narrates the story of the address in such a beautiful way, Dave, that like you, I am absolutely in love with it. But a remarkable thing that now, of course, with the faith having spread to hundreds of countries and embracing every nationality, race, creed, the Bab appears to say that his cause is the same cause as the Father, quotes a large chunk of the Gospel of Matthew and the address of Jesus Christ our Lord to the disciples about how they should travel, and how the Bab mentions that you're actually teaching the cause of God as the disciples of Jesus Christ were promoting the cause of God. Now you can imagine, this is in 1260, in the middle of a land which is steeped in Shia Islam, is totally revolutionary. And of course, later on, we know that in Tabriz and in his prison, the Bab was reading the gospel in Persian and saying that the people in the West will come to his faith. And one thing that is interesting, he says, on that day, the Bab says, he quotes the Quran, we will put a seal upon their mouth, and it's only their hands and their feet which will talk. Does it not mean, Dave, that in the day of the Bab and Baha'u'llah, it's not just words that matter? The Quran has anticipated that there'll be a seal on their mouth. Basically, it's not language and talking and preaching, it's their deeds. It's an incredible verse of the Quran. Nobody knows why would in the day of judgment, God put a seal on the mouth and just allow your hands and your legs and your actions talk.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fernando Pesce.
Yeah, please, thank you, Dave. You're a servant. Don't say doctor.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that insight. So there we are, people. I think what we'll do is we'll perhaps draw to a close. The next chapter that we're going to go on to is a very exciting chapter. It's about Mullah Hussein's journey to Tehran. So we're going to learn a lot about Mullah Hussein. And the story continues. It gets more and more great. But this is the start. It has happened, ladies and gentlemen. The declaration is out there. The letters of living are in place. We know the 361 people are going to declare that this happens in the future, and then the Bab will be going on his mission. The tragedy is going to pick up. The victory is going to pick up, and it's going to really start to explode. And we're going to see this chrysalis, this thing come apart, this flower that's transformed into what we have right now.
I just wanted to share one thing as well on what we read on the Epistle to the Letters of the Living, because it was saying about that idea of the first letters that were coming from that primary point. And just, it's interesting to put the parallel with the traditions of Islam. There are many traditions talking about, for example, the fact that the whole of the Quran is in those first 19 letters, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, the whole essence of it is in the B. And the B has a point, and the whole essence of the B is in that dot. And that can also be put in parallel with other Islamic traditions that talk about how there is the written Quran and there is the living Quran. So there are the written letters of the Quran and there's the living.
Thank you, Sina. Obviously, this reference about the letters of the living and the 19, the Bab and the other 18 making the 19 is with this Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's said that all religious truth can be found in the Quran. All truth that's in the Quran can be found in the opening surah of the Quran. All truth can be found in that first line, which is the Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, which is 19 letters. And it says all truth that's in those 19 letters can be found in that first letter, which is the letter B, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And then all truth in that B can be found in that dot. And I think it's the sixth Imam Jafar Sadiq, which Dear Khaza has mentioned before. He says, and verily that B is Baha'u'llah. He says this like hundreds of years ago. He says that B is Baha'u'llah. It's also the Bab, and this is the Bab is the primal point. When you have a pen and you put down and you're starting to write, this is the revelation of God that's pouring out. That does indeed conclude our session for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Very excited, as I say, to start the next chapter, which is Mullah Hussein's journey to Tehran. Oh God, my beloved, my heart's desire.
Dirige nuestros rostros hacia la belleza de tu unicidad y alegra nuestros pechos con los signos de la unidad divina. Adorna nuestros cuerpos con el manto de tu generosidad Aparta de nuestros ojos el velo de la maldad y danos el cáliz de tu gracia, para que la esencia de todos los seres pueda cantar tu alabanza ante la visión de tu grandeza. Revélate pues, oh Señor, por tu misericordiosa palabra y el misterio de tu divino ser, para que el sagrado éxtasis de la oración pueda henchir nuestras almas, oración que se eleve por encima de las palabras y las letras, y trascienda el murmullo de las sílabas y los sonidos, para que todas las cosas se fundan en la nada ante la revelación de tu magnificencia. Señor, estos son siervos que han permanecido fuertes y firmes en tu alianza y testamento. Se han sostenido firmemente de la cuerda de la constancia en tu causa y se han aferrado al borde del manto de tu grandeza. Ayúdalos, oh Señor, con tu gracia. Confírmalos con tu poder y fortalece sus espaldas en la obediencia a ti. Tú eres el perdonador, el benévolo.